All right, folks, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop Traders Talk. This May 7th, shortly after 11 o'clock Eastern Time, each and every Tuesday morning, we host this workshop. Great to have all of our students and members alike. We'll get the webcam popping up now inside our live trading room. Great to have Alan, Brian, Dave, Margaret, Bell, Barbara, just before Brad as well. The killer bees in tandem, I guess, in the chat. No, just teasing. Of course, great to have Chuck, Jeff. You got Dominic just here, actually. And all of us otherwise. So great to have all of us back inside our live trading room, back in chat, though, otherwise on YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, etc. Don't mind my mangled fingers here as I try and type this out to you right now. But popping up on the lower left should be at Cyber Trading You. I think I spelled that correctly. A couple broken fingers there, nevertheless. But with that said, I can still trade. Still got my right hand for my cursor. It's been a great morning altogether if you're inside our live trading room. But at the end of this workshop, if you're on social media, we cordially invite you to join us inside our live trading room. Just scan that QR code on the top left that you see there. But we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to discuss here today. Great to have Larry with us here as well, Amy too. So, one of our students just called this out before, making a quick little pop back up here. Mara, one of the Bitcoin miners. We're in the Bitcoin bull market, allegedly. And, we could talk about this in just a moment. It's moving, and it moved better yesterday, actually. But let's go over a couple stocks right now, actually. Moving right now in front of our very eyes. Peloton moving back on up right now off of support at $4. If you're inside our live trading room, I think that you could see this. Unfortunately, on the stream, I think my webcam blocks it. On the lower right, you happen to see my position manager and whatnot. So actually just right before we started Traders Talk, I'll show you my entry here right off of 396. So why did I jump in just here? Why did I take it? Why is it going up now? Well, let's actually start back from early this morning. Obviously, as this moves, I'll try and go over what had happened early on, but, we'll react to what's happening in front of us here. But, what's the news out on Peloton, folks? For all of our students here in chat, Larry, Kathleen, Rod, all of our students here right now, if you were with us earlier, do you recall the news out on Peloton? Just generally speaking. Got it right here on Benzinga Pro right here, but what's the news out on it? Anyone know here off the top of their head? Brian says, possible buyout, rumored buyout. What's that catchphrase that we say again? What's that catchphrase? It's like a common catchphrase out there within the whole market. Buy the rumor, sell the what? News. So with that in mind, we're not going to trade it once the buyout becomes official, if there even is one. But Peloton Interactive trading higher following a report suggesting that some private equity firms, whatever, are eyeing the company for potential buyout. So rumor, right? Not official, speculative. So it ended up making a big breakout early this morning in pre-market, but us as traders, we're thinking, okay, it might pull back. There's a good chance it makes lower high, lower low. All right, it's fine. But is there room for a bounce? Can there be a higher high later on today? Even if there isn't a higher high, is there room for some sort of bounce? Something that, get me like 25, 30 cents a share, knowing where resistance is, at least, intelligently taking your trade in and out. This is not a swing trade per se. This is simply a day trade. So whether it runs higher or not, every trade that we take begins with getting in. It begins with the entry point, right? That's like kind of common sense. But with that in mind, at least, why are we taking this trade? Where are we taking this trade from? Where should we have confidence taking this trade from? So that's what we're going to focus on here. Right away, I think you know where I'm going to already. If you're Barbara or Brian or Margaret, Amy, Larry, any of our students in chat, I think you know where I'm going to start with here. It's our proverbial North Star. You ever get lost in the woods? The old catchphrase, look up to the North Star, you'll find your way home. It's kind of silly, but our North Star, what is our North Star in terms of following iceberg orders? Where are we more likely than not to find the iceberg orders out there for a cheap stock like Peloton, at least? Cheap stock like Peloton, something more expensive like AMD, probably thinking like $5 levels at that. But Brian even saying just like 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? So that's exactly it. $3.50, $4, $4.55, right? So, more of this pumps up possibly. Let's just take a look to see what happened on the heat map early this morning, at least. So does it confirm iceberg levels at those 50-cent levels and whole numbers? As I take a sip of my water. Don't want to be holding on to that for 5 minutes. No, it's to say that there was at least some order out there at $4, 20 plus thousand shares on the bid. That's there. Was there more volume elsewhere, though? And that answer is yes. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff happening here early in the morning. Looks like some sort of, stack of volume out there on the sell side that was building up. up towards what price is that? 450, 50-cent level. All right, so 50-cent level there. At least there was some volume on $4. So I would normally start off plotting 50-cent levels, whole numbers. That means $4, $4.50, above that, potentially $5. Doesn't fully show it here on the heat map just yet, but that's just basically our North Star. That's what we're going to start with regardless, whether it shows it or not. That's an assumed level. So I'll plot some lines there to begin. Obviously, you do see a level on this chart, though. Otherwise, we'll get to that one next, I reckon. That being this one here at 430. Make it purple here. But, that was resistance clearly after 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, that was actually a key level that we had our focus on before that point, right? Before that time, I think at 8:45 in the morning, I was calling this out to you, basically saying, if you're in our trading room here, should pop up on the top right. I wrote Peloton needs to flip 430 from resistance to support. And that was at 8:45 in the morning. So where I was looking at 430 was more this level here from the CVP column on Bookmap. Big spike, right? Much larger spike compared to everything else. So even at this point in time at 8:45, that was a clear resistance, and it continued to be one afterwards here, right? All right, well, listen, if it's not going to flip that from resistance to support, if it's not even going to attempt it, there's only one other way it's going to go, right? And that's lower. So maybe it can drop down to 4. Maybe it could hit $4 as support, bounce back up. Very possible, right? Well, outside of the heat map, at least, outside of the heat map and outside of, just assuming 50-cent levels and whole numbers, let's actually look back on the long-term chart here. I mean, Peloton's been getting beat up, so this is not a swing trade, really. This is a day trade in full. Look at this like Christmas tree here, basically up and down back in 2021. It's making lower highs, lower lows since, right? Well, let's just take a look here because we're going to plot a level that's around 428-ish, right around 428, 430 back from the end of last year. Pretty strong support. Let me ask us here in chat, Grant, Barbara, Mark, Joyce, all of us here really quick, the same motions each and every week. When a stock breaks through big support and it crashes below it, support should initially become what? Resistance, right? So that will be our next level ahead if this continues to push from here. But otherwise, I was more focused around this price here. I even lowered it. I think I had like 390-ish, if not mistaken, even. It didn't touch it here around back in February, but generally speaking, I think that we had some good support right around there. I was eyeballing it perhaps more than anything and just seeing that break lower. Well, that should be resistance at first. Very similar line of thinking. Well, it broke out right away here, right? So this smashed above this line, this area, right around 390-ish, 395, I reckon it really was. Okay, so there wasn't even a case to see resistance there, perhaps. It just smashed right above resistance and ran, right? All right, well, let's flip it around, folks. When a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of that, resistance should initially become what? Support. And there we go. Chatted earlier, a few of our students that are answering me now. Adam, I see, Dave, Aim, Mark, all of us here in chat. There we go. Now, again, top right, popping up right there in chat. I said Peloton, historical level around 390. And if you're on YouTube right now, if you think I'm just kind of like making up stuff. Again, we like to have timestamps here because it shows that it pays to be a member inside our chat board. If you're following Fausto, following myself, following Rich, it gives you the chance to make money and set yourself up to try and take cleaner entries. So at 8:51, I wrote this to you. Peloton historical level around 390 for support if it can't flip 430. If. So that's where I'll also tell you, hey, trading is revolved around two pretty important keywords, if and then, right? If this can't flip 430 from resistance to support, then I'm looking for a move down towards 390. I wrote that to you at 8:45, 8:51 in the morning at least. That's where I say, hey, line yourself up to take that trade, right? Put a line on your chart there at 390, 390-ish going into the open. Follow me on that trade. Now, why is this even more important? Well, let's take a look to see what happened on the heat map here. Obviously, I was going to show this in a moment, but comes down there this morning. It drops down, and you don't want to catch a falling knife. So as much as we're entertained by the aspect or the thought of a bounce back up, buy the rumor, sell the news. Oh, you know what I realized this whole time? I don't have my fancy lights on behind me. I knew something was missing on my stream. How about that? Get that back up. Do I have the second one open? Yeah, we got the fancy lights behind me now. There we go. Something was missing on visual there. With that in mind, at least, you don't want to catch the falling knife and have this just completely sink. So it ended up pulling down there within the first 5 minutes, right at 9:33, 9:34 in the morning. But, and this is the kicker, the icing on the cake, no pun intended, with this iceberg order that pops up, over 250,000 shares to buy at 390, exactly at that same price I'd called out. Hey, 2 + 2 never equals 3, folks. It equals 4 every time. The stars are aligning here for a potential move. And not only that, this ended up laddering up across the morning. So that was the good part about this trade at first. This was the perfect scenario that we were looking for. It dropped down to our level. It bounced up pretty well. Unfortunately, though, this didn't continue at the time. This didn't really continue to make that better push. So this ended up pulling back pretty hard, and I ended up taking less of a profit on this trade than I wanted to. So I was in right from 392 as my entry price. I was looking for the VWAP to get flipped into support at least, and then for the move up towards that 430. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Can't be perfect, but that's where I come to you once more and I say, every trade begins with getting in. Right? All right, I didn't do as well as I wanted to on this trade. This didn't do as much as I wanted it to do on this trade. Okay, I had an A+ entry. That's what helps me out on this trade at the end of it all. We're not future tellers, right? But we have to position ourselves in what happens more often than not. When a stock breaks above resistance, smashes above it, and runs off of it, I'd like to think that initially resistance should look to turn into support. That's what happens more often than not. So that's where you say you want to line yourself up to take that trade. Thankfully, this year was really the kicker that led to the entry. And I ended up getting out on this trade as I hit like 406, 405, pulled back a little bit here. I'm like, damn it, all right. But then just a moment ago, look what happened. This order got pulled here. This was at 10:14 in the morning. Fausto's head on where, he was in this trade at this point. We're pulled back. It was a great entry. Well, he doesn't control the weather. He doesn't know if this order is going to get pulled ahead of time. So it was a great entry right there. It got pulled, that iceberg order. It didn't get broken through. The thing just got pulled. Well, what happens when the floor gets pulled underneath you? I hope that's never happened to anyone that lives in like a high-rise apartment building or a second-story apartment, right? But otherwise, when the floor gets pulled underneath you, you go down. And he got out just in time. It did drop. This pulled back. But after a little absence here, this just popped up pretty much as we were beginning Traders Talk. I didn't realize this until literally like right here. As I finished up my coaching call with a student, we just kind of finished up and I had to set up the stream. And I wasn't even looking at Peloton at this point because it was an afterthought. It was kind of garbage to me at this point. So I even missed this one little move. But when I saw this iceberg pop back up, I'm like, holy smokes, it's actually like, it was actually even right here at the time, 396. So worst case that happens is that it breaks lower. So if I jump in at 396 and set my stop under the 390 again, or maybe 388 or so, make sure it doesn't hit a lower low, then it's low risk, somewhat high reward, because we wanted this to make the run higher at some point this morning. Didn't do it. Doesn't mean that it's going to. But once the stock is showing better trend and it's breaking through a big level on the way up and we have that iceberg again, it gives us the shot, right? It gives us the thought of what if. So that's where I jumped back in on this trade just here, right at 396. It was pretty much as I finished up, as I just told you. And, if I didn't get 396, I would have had 4 at that point. But now at this point, I want to see this try and make a better squeeze. See if this can make the higher high up towards 430 at this point. So, hey, I was going to actually go over Peloton at some point throughout Traders Talk this morning with you, but I ended up just making this move as we started. So we'll follow up on this trade in just a bit. There were better stocks that even moved, more better than this. Patrick says he likes the fancy lights. There you go. I knew something was missing on the stream there for a bit. All right, so let's actually rewind. Let's go back on the morning here because, I know a lot of us were with us early in pre-market hours. And, truth be told, this was like one of the better looking stocks going into the market open. This ended up making a pretty good push at first here. Give me a brief moment. Took a little snapshot I want to show you. Give me a second there, and that's it. But so this ended up making a great move prior to 8 o'clock. I put out the pre-market list at like 7:45 in the morning. And then, of course, to my luck, this popped at 7:47. So I had to rewrite the list out to you, add this stock, of course, to our list. How could we not? Ended up making a huge pop. But the more important part is right at 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when I could start trading pre-market. I can't trade before 8 o'clock. I'm on TradeStation. That's like the only little thing about them that I'm not a fan of. But that's fine. I don't need to wake up at the crack of dawn to trade. I like my beauty sleep, folks. I think that you like it also. So that's where I say that we can wait till after 8 o'clock. It's no race. The only people that we should be racing ourselves. But that's where right here at 8 o'clock, 8:02 in the morning, I took the snapshot. This is a filled-in order book to me. This doesn't look like a level 5 stock to me. This has a penny spread, filled in orders, icebergs even here at 175, at 157 here. This stock is 100,000% tradable, right? So we should feel very good about possibly taking this trade. And I jumped in on a trade with a student earlier on a coaching call. Is this one? So I want to go over it, but that's where I say it also pays to follow us in the chat and be a member in our chat board, because before I jumped in 8:30. Kind of behind the scenes before 8:30, and otherwise, this morning I was on a call at 8 o'clock. But Rich here is in chat, always posting at 7:30, opening the room up, and I am scanning myself, but I'm looking at his call outs because I know he makes good call outs. I'm following him because there might be a stock he's looking at that I'm not, and it could be making a move. So actually, that's how I got alerted of this trade to begin with. Rich made the call out on this stock pretty much at 7:48. Like on the pop here, he posted the news. And then his next call out, I'm showing it to all of us in the chat board right now. I'll show him here, get a little FaceTime. Show this beautiful mug there on the screen. Just give me a sec. There we go. So my colleague Rich ended up writing this at 7:48, just posting the news. But 7:49, he wrote, let's see if CMND could hold 155 here. Folks, he's not just making a number up. He's not just like typing a number out and that's it. Why 155? Well, you could even see here it was holding pretty nicely as a little resistance for a few bars in a row. So perhaps it's more based off of just the chart top than anything. We'll see if there's volume based around it. But it seems like, generally speaking, for the first 3 or 4 minutes of this move, it was building, formulating resistance right around 155-ish. So I think that's what he meant there at that point. It broke out, it pulled back. Well, hey, when a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of it, that's where we'd want to see resistance hold as support. So I can't trade prior to 8 o'clock. The second this opened up for me at 8 o'clock, I was looking to see if 155 could hang, and I jumped in right at that point. So led to a good squeeze at that point off the 155 right there. 155. It was on like the 8 o'clock candle, 8:01 candle. I normally don't trade that early after 8 o'clock, like that early, like in my pre-market morning. I typically give it a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. And perhaps even here I could have, because it only continued to try and flip resistance into support a little bit further. But you could see it just stalled out. It ended up just wasting my time for a little while here. I was in this trade as it was kind of pulling back. It was moving back up. So on this one, I ended up getting out. I think it was where? Took part out at 65 and then part out at 75. That was it. So the first half, at least I shaved some off, like take a little out there. Maybe it can run higher, but then the other half, it just wasted my time. So it's not a complaint. It's just to tell you, it's like, all right, you got to move on. There's better trades out there, not only during pre-market hours, mind you, but also if you're not trading pre-market at that point, if there's nothing else that fits your eye, then use that time after that trade just to line yourself up going forward. So as long as you're making good use of your time after that trade, and that's what matters most to me. All right, so let me know if you have any questions, at least so far from what we covered, just at least in the morning session, the CMND. This was a loser afterwards. It pulled back below that 155 again. Resistance ended up, holding a support at first, but then it ended up crashing, and that was it. So, we moved away from this trade as soon as the market opened up, I think, even. But otherwise, started the morning off with a nice little profit. It wasn't anything too special, but it was good. And really quick, last one, I guess for now, just while I have it up here, because you do see it on the bottom right of my screen, position manager, along with the Peloton SOUN. This is just more of a dud. This is just a flat trade right now, holding above support at 5. This is an easy one for me to go back on and cover for you, but this has no life to it now. So if it bounces back up here, I'll be happy. But right now, though, there's no real momentum. So you can obviously see where the better level was from yesterday on this trade, right? Big orange line, red line here, $5. Here's your stock moving up to it. So that's resistance. That's your brick wall right there, or even like titanium wall right there, basically. 118,000 shares, 117,000, that is. Well, it ended up breaking above it and then pulled back under it, right? All right, so don't mind the pullback part. I know it's not easy to kind of not mind, but if you can, just try and not mind this big ugly shake here. When the stock is breaking over that resistance, what type of pressure are we seeing? Are we seeing buying pressure or are we seeing selling pressure at that time as the stock is making a move upward? Of course, that is a sell order out there at $5, but what type of pressure is coming in? What momentum is winning the battle right there? Don't mind the pullback, but as far as the movement upward, buying pressure, right? All right, well, hey, same question, but different question. Look at the green on the right columns there, the CVP and the Delta column right there on the far right. What do we nickname that? Same, but different, right? It's buying. The green is buying. So the more buying that we have off this 5 level, I would like to think it's going to run. Okay, it's easy to say. It moved up like 35 cents, nearly 40 cents. I'd call that a good run. One more time, folks, just answer for me if you can. When a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of it, I'd like to think that resistance should initially become what? I tried yesterday in the afternoon, just didn't make my famed under and over, didn't crash into it under and over. But today it did. And that's where I started to take entries on this trade. So, I took this a couple times. I just went lackluster on the first one here, maybe like 2 cents, 3 cents. And then as it pulled back into it, I ended up taking the same entry again here, just off of 501. So, I'm looking for that buying to prevail and for this to move back up higher towards the next level at 525. If it doesn't do it, I got my seatbelt on, as I say, and that actually segues me perfectly right into email land. So let me go really quick into my emails here. Just again, I always say if you're a new student here, new member just in Traders Talk, we're always available. Myself, Rich, and of course Fausto as well. You could always talk to him throughout the days and weeks. But if you have any questions, private chat us, folks. If you see the 3 dots to the right of my ugly mug, not the webcam, but my picture right there in chat, you see the 3 dots in chat to the right of my picture. Click it, select private chat. You could always just shoot me over a message or any question that you have afterwards. We could always follow up. But otherwise, though, Josh at ctutrading.com as well is good. And I had a few emails that came in just before. So this one, so I will say from Brian, and Brian mentioned this to me just the other day. So I'm not going to mention the numericals, Brian, but Brian took a hit on SPY calls, and I know he wanted me to cover it for everyone here. So he took a bit of a hit. Won't mention the details, but I know he's one of our great traders in our room, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I shoot straight. That Brian's probably one of our better traders, collectively throughout our entire room. He's experienced. He's been with us for a long time. He trades tradable stocks. He sets his his stops tight. At least normally. So it's a great lesson and experience that it wasn't even a question. He wanted me to share this in front of everyone here. And it's a great just lesson for everyone alike. I appreciate Brian bringing this up because it happens to everyone at times. And it's a great reminder. It's good reassurance, if anything, right? So Brian says, good morning, Josh. This was actually back from last week on Thursday. It was from Thursday. So I said, good morning, Josh. I don't have a question, but I have a lesson for you to share with all the other members. I lost my ass yesterday, that being last Wednesday, when the markets were going up after Powell was starting to speak, everyone's best friend, Jerome, right? Brian ended up buying calls on the SPY. Just as he made the trade, he got a phone call. saying that he had to pick something up. So he works in selling promotional items for his regular job. So he had to sell, like, he had to pick up a big box, big package of hats, and he had to distribute out like some, like, a little errand for his company he had to do. I got the phone call, talking about that, and he ended up grabbing a few things and he left without setting a stop limit. And he got back 45 minutes later. He was down a lot. Needless to say, he was very pissed off at himself. He says at the end, seatbelts, 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 right? I would bring this up anyway because he wanted me to. He encouraged me to in front of everyone here. But it's even more so I bring it up because I know Brian is easy to get back on top of that horse and just keep going. And, he's one of our great traders where he takes intelligent entries, most importantly. So, I'm certain that he learned himself as far as like, shit, I got to set my stop again. I got to make sure I always do that, right? It's just more reassurance. So if anything, it's actually very easy for someone like Brian, at least, to get back on the horse when he takes very good trades to begin with. He has clean entries. He goes with good momentum. And, again, he even said it wasn't a question, more so a lesson for me to share with all the other members. Brian, I appreciate you bringing the story up because, we don't always hear that from traders as much. So, it even goes to show you're real. You're a real person. You go through the motions like myself and all of us otherwise, right? So, I encourage, folks to at least, share some of those stories when you want to, and, good stories as well, stories of success, but also the trials and tribulations. It's exactly why I phrase it how I do, and it's how Brian said it at the end with the seatbelt analogy. I asked Fausto this because I started phrasing it this way recently, so I gave it to him. I started giving him the Traders Talk stuff recently, so I'm like, Fausto, when you wear your seatbelt, when you drive around with your family, you go to, your friends for Greek Easter, is your seatbelt on loose or is it on tight? And it threw him for a loop for a second. Right? I just remember like he was silent for a little bit. How should I answer? Like, your seatbelt should be tight, right? Your seatbelt should be tight. It's not going to do you much favors if your seatbelt's loose. Maybe it gets you past a ticket. Maybe, a cop won't notice as much that your seatbelt's loose. But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't do you many favors in terms of protecting yourself. So, make sure your seatbelt is on to begin with, but also make sure it's pretty tight. As redundant as I may sound, I compare myself to like one of those like drawstring dolls. You pull the drawstring, you have the same 5 lines or catchphrases that I say over and over. So if it's not going to make a big move going up, it's bound to make a big move just the opposite direction. So for as good as this entry is here that I'm in on right now on Peloton, well, let's actually tighten our seatbelt now because we are actually off to a decent little start on this trade. But is this really going to continue? Is this going to make a higher high? I don't really know. It just kind of made a equal top right there. It's pulling back. It's back under the VWAP price again. So even this, we're not out of the weeds just yet. We got to make sure this breaks the higher high and then we'll go. But if it's high, then, at this stage of my day, it's 11:33. We had a great morning. So, once you stack up your cushion amount, once you're at a certain point in your morning, you don't want to just give back and that's it because you feel bad. Obviously, the more that you do give back, but it's okay to go par for a hole, right? So a little golf analogy mixing back in there. If this pulls back and hits me at 395 now, who the hell cares? It was a great trade, at least from earlier today. We took some money on. We had better trades from the morning as well that we'll get into. Obviously, the real runner that we ended up getting was the G-Sun trade, right? GSUN, big pop this morning from basically 350 up to 7 and change. So, we'll talk about that actually next. So really quick, Lauren says, Brian, thanks for sharing the good lesson. Absolutely. Abdul basically agreeing, I feel, with Brian. He says, that's my bad. He has to do better. Abdul saying on that. And, I feel like a lot of us, agree with that sentiment, Abdul. A lot of us kind of feel like they're in the same shoes at times. And even if it's not like in the sense of getting the phone call and stepping away from your desk, because that obviously you really want to make sure that you have your stop set there because you don't know how long that phone call might be. You don't know, who knows, right? Like I forget stuff, right? Everyone forgets things in life. What happens if you finish that call in 25 minutes and then you're like, oh man, I'm starving. Man, let's get that lunch I was supposed to make an hour ago. And then you make your lunch and then you come back and things that you got to make sure that seatbelt's on, right? But even if you're at your desk, you got to make sure that seatbelt's there. You might have your position manager open like I show and it's easy to manage those trades as long as you have that open, but you never know when news might come out the other direction. You never know when the order book might open up, the spread opens up. This makes an erroneous shake. So Margaret says, I appreciate that. Margaret says your catchphrases are really good reminders. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate that, Margaret. And always your kind feedback as always. Lauren says ditto what Margaret said. Appreciate you, Lawrence, as well. All right, so let's keep going through some emails, though. I want to make sure that we can get through Lee, I think, and then Rob C as well. And then maybe one more on top after. Just give me a sec. There we go. I start talking. I was supposed to drink my water. I get stuck talking, holding that thing. So perfect segue. How about this? Great from Lee, actually. Runs right into this GSUN trade. Hi, Josh. Can you please discuss how we might have gotten into GSUN after Fausto called it out the first time? So right back to the chat board here. Right back to the chat board because, again, it pays to be a member inside our trading room, not just honestly logged in, but it's also looking at the chat board and seeing what we're posting. So this is where Fausto called this out at 9:42 in the morning. I was shouting this out a few times already, but you posted that. You should see that there on the top right, and then right here, 9:42 in the morning, Fausto. First, the punch on GSUN, right? And this is where I tell you, in the chat, I like to be a lot more typey. Same with Rich. We like to give you some good verbiage to work with. Fausto is simple and to the point. When you see him post this stock, just turn to it. Just take a look at it, right? That's all he's telling you right there. So this thing popped at like 9:40, 9:39 in the morning, and just a few minutes later, he'd called it out. And then, later, it ended up making that better push. So the question that came in from Lee, he was asking, hey, how might we have gotten into GSUN after Fausto first called it out? All right, well, again, I shoot straight. I didn't take this trade here. Why? I was focused on other stocks at that point. So this would have worked out, would have been a great pop and runner here. But this is where I'll also tell you, folks, if there's already a stock that you're making money on, or if there's a trade that you're setting yourself up to take, don't be so, I don't mean to sound blunt when I say this, but I you know what I do? You know what? Screw it. I do, because you got to gain discipline and you got to realize, there's a difference between stubbornness and discipline. We don't want to be stubborn, but we want to focus on what we know is right, what feels good. So there's a difference between being disciplined and more weak-minded, where I say, hey, I don't want to just turn to a stock because right away it's just popping. And what I mean by that is jump in. Just jump in, right? So, hey, you could have lined yourself up on GSUN. You could have taken the time right there and say, all right, where's my levels? And then once the stock breaks over said level, you could jump in. But if there's a trade that you're already in and it's running and you're making money on it, or if there's something that you really like and it's moving in said direction, I'm not going to be as jumpy and no, I'm going to stick with what I know. All right. So there's other stocks out there. It's okay to miss this move. Now, if you turned over to and wow, this thing's up big. All right, let's focus on it right now. I'm not in anything just yet. I didn't like anything until this point. Wow, this thing looks incredible. Well, that's where you got to start sinking your teeth into level 3, level 4, and more so where those iceberg orders are. So right away, where I'm going to start plotting here, 450, we'll loosely just plot right there. I'm not going to get it perfect. And then $5 practically there, right? 450, and then 5. Well, simply put, this ended up holding support above 4. It broke above resistance at 4, Lee. Resistance initially became support. That's first. And then otherwise, once it broke over the next major resistance at 5, easily enough, it made the higher high. Now, again, that's like kind of a Captain Hindsight comment. That's easy for me to just tell you after the fact. Let's actually look into the heat map and see where the levels really were. It's easy to say 4 and 5. Was there a better level, though, like within that area or around that area? So Fausto called it out at 9:42, mind you. So in terms of hindsight, we got to realize that, we're not getting in on this first pump. No one was watching it beforehand. So, hey, at 9:42, it starts to drag back down after the initial run. Really quick. There we go. One second. There we go. All right. So make it easy on the eyes for you, right? Where do we see a darker red-orange line going across this page at any point? Doesn't have to stick across the whole way through, but what price do we see a dark orange or red line going across the page? Tried making it as easy on the eyes there for you. All of us unanimously saying 460, right? Abdul, Margaret, Dave, Glenn, Joyce, all of us otherwise have been in chat. Yeah, my bad. Margaret, Henry. There we go. Yep, right there at 460, right? Now, what was this? Why is this a level? Well, it represents about 18,000 shares on the ask. It's resistance there, right? So, definitely your largest order across the book in this area, like by far and by large. So this looks pretty good. I like it. Now it gets pulled. It got pulled. Look at this. It goes from orange to like blue. It means, that order for the most part got pulled from the book. The stock moved up to it and then it pulled under it. Now that's where I say at that stage in the morning, this is clearly a resistance now to where you say, okay, well, what happens if this stock could at least try and re-break it, retest it? The more times it does, it's that popsicle stick effect, right? Where the more that we twist and bend, snap that popsicle stick, it's going to eventually break, right? Again, I like to give like the 2x4 example. I don't think anyone here, I certainly can't, definitely not with my mangled fingers now. I can't chop a piece of wood like that. I try and use my popsicle stick reference. So if we have like a popsicle stick in between our fingers, the more that we poke it, flick it, snap it, it's not like it's getting stronger, folks. So the more times that this is flicking this resistance here and poking at it here, testing it, it's bound to make that larger, more reactionary move after. It's as simple as that. Even with this order getting pulled, I treat it the same way. This was resistance from the chart earlier. Like this showed as resistance. So just because the order got pulled doesn't mean anything to me outside of just saying, okay, the more that it can keep testing this one price, we should be getting that more reactionary move. So it wasn't even 450. It was more 460 at least there, right? And then, like we said, the 50-cent levels and whole numbers aspect of it all. But, that was really at like 950, 951 in the morning. It broke above that 460 again. Look what happened on the next candle even. You don't need it because it just, once it breaks over, that's really where you'd like to take your entry. If you miss it and it's already at like 480-ish, 475, the top of this candle, then I'd say you'd need to see resistance get flipped into support. And just on the next candle, you actually get that pullback. You get that little, move down. So as far as like, what was the answer to this puzzle? That's what we focus on in Traders Talk each and every day, each and every week here. Tuesday mornings, we do this. Look what just became support right now as I'm talking to you. You don't make this shit up, folks. And I don't mean to sound rude by saying that, but it's true. It's like we're focused on where the larger levels are from the order book. And those paint support resistance going forward for you. I didn't take this trade. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I personally took this trade. I was focused on other stocks doing all right there. But what's the answer to this puzzle? If you want to know, that's where you have to go back on level 3 and level 4. And by back, really, it's a matter of saying, Fausto called this out at 9:42 in the morning, right? So you're not really going back at that point as much as you're watching in the real moment of things, right? So at 9:42, there wasn't much out there really at all. So maybe it can keep going. Looks like resistance at 5 built up. But after that, it's like 460, right? This order may have been the same person. You could see the difference there, 5 to 460. So, that was your real level to enter off of just shortly afterwards. Just about 5, 6, 7 minutes later, it broke through that big level on the way up, made a pretty big move shortly after, right? So it's exactly what we look for. And you know what? Hey, the more that you are watching these workshops, these reviews, even if you didn't take the trade yourself, you want to ask like, hey, like, how might we have gotten into this trade? The more that you realize this after the fact and in review, you don't want to be capped in hindsight all the time. You got to learn to actually pull the trigger. I have a few traders that, are with us in Traders Talk, but like just there's a roadblock psychologically that unfortunately prevents them from literally pulling the trigger like ever. And I mean that, right? Like EVER. It's tough. And that's where it's like kind of a detriment to your time that you're investing. Now, for those that are pulling the trigger, at least even just here and there, Well, at least you're on some track. And the more that you're going through this, then it's going to be even easier at that stage for you to just pull the trigger further. Once you get over the initial roadblock, once you get over the first roadblock of actually all right, I took one. I took a couple here. Okay. So even if you're not a gunslinger out there, a few of us are, that's all right. If you're doing 2 trades a day, at least you're pulling the trigger. At least you're doing something. The more that we're doing, then we're going to shake the cobwebs off. We're going to shake the emotion off. And then at that point, it makes it easier for us to react on trades just like this, where you say, okay, big fat red line here. That's resistance there. It made a false breakout here, so it looks kind of scary. But that's where I told you earlier on, what was the other stock that we were talking about? Don't mind the drop part. Don't mind the drop part, right? The more buying that we're seeing, the more upward tests of resistance that we get, we're going to get that breakout. So, from there, it led to a pretty good run. Nice reaction, right? All right. So let me know if you have any other follow-ups on the G-Sun trade. And that goes for everyone, not just Lee who had asked that. And that was a great question. As good of a question that came in from one of our silver students, Robert, or Bob, I should say. So he wrote this earlier to me, and I said, just shoot me a quick email, and I appreciate him sending it in. Easy for me to go through. So Bob saying, just a question about large orders appearing and then disappearing very quickly. So we honestly kind of just hit the nail on the head right there with this one example. That 460 iceberg, it got pulled. That order got pulled, right? Bob says it appears to be spoofing, which of course is illegal. Any comments about this? Thank you. Well, let's actually jump right back to it, because that order, before it disappeared, it appeared at 460. And before it appeared at 460, it was at 5. Just point blank, you could see the time difference here, this vertical, where this orange disappears at 5 and appears at 460. Let me ask you folks really quick. This goes for Bob as well, and all of us here, just all of us collectively. Let's pretend that you're trying to sell at $5, and then you say, oh, shoot, I don't think it's going to hit $5. Let me try and sell lower. Is that illegal? Is that illegal? Better not be, right? Better not be illegal. Separate question. Let's pretend there's a stock that you're in and you're about to sell it, and you're like, wait a second, whoa, I think that this can go much higher. What? Wait a second, I think this might pump up to 6. Wait, all right, let me try and sell higher. Is that illegal? And the reason I ask it this way is because it's easy to get worried about the opposite. It's easy to get paranoid of market maker manipulation, because you hear that not even within CTU land here. We obviously talk about that here. We have to. It's part of volume. But it's kind of like a catchy headline to get people click on YouTube videos. You have all other people out there talking about it, but they're talking about it for the wrong reasons. They're just trying to get you to click on their shit. Don't get too paranoid about orders getting pulled. Yes, some people manipulate. Some people have bad intention. Stops get taken out. Your stops get taken out because market makers are shaking the stock down to take your stops out, have it run up. That happens. But when you see an order getting pulled from the book, don't just start expecting the worst, thinking the worst. Oh, it's market maker manipulation. Oh, it's spoofing. It's illegal. Just react to the level, because hey, even that 460 here with this order getting pulled, wouldn't you think the stock would fly? Wouldn't you think the stock would fly up then? So if that order gets pulled, wow, I should have run up then, right? Not necessarily. Now, let's say if you got caught in this, let's say you jumped in at 465 and then it tanks afterwards. Well, you might be frustrated and shit, they got me. Oh, it had to have been manipulation. What happened afterwards? This thing flew. So I try not to get too shaken up by the what ifs of the world. I tell you all the time that the 2 most powerful words in trading are if and then. If stock does this, then Josh does that. You know what I mean? So those are very important words. But when you start thinking it in a negative connotation of oh no, what if it does this? Oh no, it might do that. Oh, I shouldn't do this. just focus on this as resistance. It's been holding this the whole, or at least in this, whole 5-minute, 3-minute sequence. There was a head fake here, so it might not even come back up there again. It's dropping down here. There might not be another test of 460 at this point, right? We don't know that. This thing might tank down a 350. This might be game over. Well, it doesn't happen that way. It pulls back up. It moves back up over time, and it gives you another crack. So that's where I tell you just what I focus on as a trader. This is just, strategy in a nutshell. If you remember Spark Notes and Cliff Notes back in college, I used to live off of that, at least myself. It's all like the shortcuts to the books. So you get the Spark Notes. All right, well, the Spark Note here that I always say every week that we go over each and every month. It's one of my catchphrases, Margaret, on my drawstring. Pull the drawstring, you get the catchphrase type of saying. So here, the more times it tests the level in a smaller time frame, that's even better. It's that popsicle stick analogy again. Once again, it's weakening. So as far as, again, Bob's question of, large orders appearing and then disappearing very quickly. As a new trader, it is easy to think negatively about that and say, oh, it's manipulation. What if it's this? Oh, it's just spoofing. I mean, yes, there have been some stocks that have gotten the better end of myself that I've taken losses on more than wins. And it's like, this thing freaking is annoying, and you move on from it. Not every stock's going to be as easy on the eyes as this, or just retests, breaks, and runs. But that's what we want to focus on. That's our whole strategy that we're looking for that allows us the ability to not just enter the trade, but that's where I say when a stock breaks through a big level, should get a big move. So, you're not looking for 5 pennies on this. You're not looking for 10 pennies on this little thing. You're looking for a run. So you don't need to be perfect with the exit on that. Obviously, once this thing is off and running, you just want to be pristine with your entry. So even with an iceberg order getting pulled from the book, it could still create a great level for you to work off of going forward. Got a little move back up here on SOUM. Let's see if I can try and give you just a quick example. Otherwise, though, another clean example, at least there. I mean, this is a little fun. Like, this is some funny business here. This is a ladder on the bid, which looked good to begin with. This is just a strategy that traders will use in terms of allowing a stock to pump up further. But unfortunately, this didn't continue at the time. It ended up dragging back down at that point. So, that's where once this order starts getting pulled and then reappearing again, I'm not normally a fan of that. And especially if it looks very odd, not just this stair-step ladder, that looks clean. But where you start seeing orders getting pulled and placed over and over, and it looks just like a hot mess. Maybe this SGE, it's not the best example per se. Like here, you got a couple orders that are sticking out, but when you start seeing a lot of these smaller orange lines popping in and out, they're very short-lived. I'm not a fan of that. When you see that on the heat map, that's where you just want to turn the channel, turn to a different TV station. Your show is not on this channel right here. That's for sure. Turn it, go to a different channel. So, ultimately, if it's easy on the eyes, then it's something that I'll focus on as a trader. Even if the order gets pulled, though, again, even if an order disappears from the book, like right here, even, at 425, this order did get pulled. Well, what was the intent of it? Well, it looks like the stock dropped back down after. So is it possible? And I'm just shooting from the hip here. I don't know the answer to this. It's easier to say in hindsight now. But is it possible that whoever wanted to sell 100,000+ shares at 425, is it not possible that they just wanted to smash the bid and just get out at market pretty much here at 415? It's doable. It's just, it's realistic. So you don't want to think malintent. You don't want to think market maker manipulation, but you just want to have the thought of, okay, well, what if it doesn't get up there? What if it doesn't continue to push up? Well, that's where you say, if it's not going to make that big move going up, start thinking about what happens if it fails to do that. It's going to make a big move, just the opposite direction. Irving says, better to have good reasons. Always better to have good reasons. That's right. That's where I go in journaling class and I'll like mention. And I honestly, it's been a rarity nowadays. It's like for like a couple of years now. Honestly, it's been a rarity. But I've had traders like that's where in journaling class be like, "What's your reason for risking $10,000 on this position?" I'd get a trader that would write like up as their reason for risking tens of thousands of dollars. That's not really the best reason, right? You want to have good reasons for entry, right? Leonard saying, can the bots set that up? Meaning, Irving and Leonard, in what regard can the bots set that up? Meaning, like, can this be program trading basically? Yes. The answer to that, just generally speaking, is yes, because we see program trading just at certain times of the day. It's not so visible on every single stock, but that's where Irving, Leonard following up, he says the spoofing. Can the bots set up spoofing? Well, I'll kind of tie that back to like how I phrase it as program trading. So my answer is still yes in that same regard. So yes, this could be algo program driven based where the orders are getting pulled from the book and moving with the stock. But it could also be in the sense of maybe it hit a certain price and they're just gonna smash the bid instead of having this order out there, right? But we don't know ahead of time. And as much as we don't know ahead of time, we can't get paranoid pulling our hair out thinking about what if that. We have to think what if in the sense of what if it fails to move up towards that 425 level? What if it fails to run up towards there? What if this can't flip resistance into support at the VWAP? That's where you got to get out. And that's where I got out on my trade. It was from 392. I got out at like 405 it was. Wanted more on it, didn't get it. So you ask what if in that regard, but you don't like ask what if in the sense of like, again, malintent, negative energy, negative thoughts. You don't want to bring that to your trading because that's where you just get more emotional. Just get more emotional as a trader. You don't want to get emotional. I was joking around earlier to any of my alpha male machismo guys in my chat board right now. And like, oh, I don't get emotional. I'm semi-joking because I know that you're not thinking that. No one's actually thinking that live. But just for everyone, folks, everyone has emotions that tie into trading. I was going over that with one trader, at least on a coaching call a few months back, a trader in our room that's been turning a good corner of late, really good actually. So very good conversation dialogue. They've been showing it in their trades, but they were telling me like, I'm not really getting too emotional at this point. And I would have further thought a combo with them and they would go into like, them missing a move and getting frustrated. I'm like, is that not an emotion? So, everyone has emotion when it comes to trading, folks. That's all I'll say there, right? Even my alpha machismo guys in the chat board right now. All right, really quick. From Ray, this one, I will just mention Ray. I'm going to write you back in private chat here. This is not as much a question, more of a TradeStation software issue. So, actually, Ray, I'll just tell you verbally right now. I think I went through the same issue with TradeStation 10.0, their new version. I'll chat you on the side, Ray. We'll talk more about TradeStation logistics here in a bit. Folks, if you have any other questions, let me know. We're about to finish up anyways. We head into 12 o'clock. Let me know if there's any other questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions. But I'll tell you what, we have had a pretty good morning altogether. We're in earnings season, like we said, so we should be having a good Tuesday morning, but it did show. SOUN still holding afloat for me there. Peloton still holding afloat for me there with the iceberg order still showing at 395. That iceberg's still there for the time being. All right, folks. So, hey, otherwise, Patrick, we got here on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed Patrick. Just a quick little shout to him, just joining us live at least. But otherwise, if you're interested in taking the next steps, joining us inside our live trading room, just scan that QR code with your phone, with your camera. If you're not as fancy with your technology, don't worry. I was not at first. Just go right down to the link on the bottom of that scrolling green banner right there, ctu.co/trial. Get you signed up for a week-long trial to our live trading room. See all of our students like Leonard, Jeffrey, got Margaret, Irving, Luis, got Dave, we got Bob, there we go, Barbara, Mark, and all of us just otherwise. I appreciate everyone just participating, joining us here this week. And again, hey, our next audio broadcast, all of us here together, will be at 2:30 Eastern heading into the afternoon meeting. Probably a whole new list of moves here, folks. Oh, Jeffrey saying GameStop moves. You know what? All right, really quick. If you closed out Traders Talk early, well, that's on you because now at this point, I got to finish up by at least shouting out GameStop, right? GameStop. Holy shit. This was the biggest missed move of my week, probably. I can't believe I did this. Jeff, I'm happy you brought this up right here before we finished up. I truly am, because I did want to cover this, actually. So I wasn't trying to forget about this trade. It slipped past me. So called out 15 as support earlier today. I said, hey, don't catch the falling knife. It has to do what we want it to do, what we need it to do, rather. And you could try and take the trade from there. So 15, big support level. It broke above it yesterday as resistance. Resistance should be support. Big iceberg there. It breaks under it. It breaks over it. Your best entry is to buy a stock directly there as it breaks through the big level on the way up. I called it out before it made that test, and I just turn over to another stock. I just jump over to other trades. I'm flopping around like a fish myself. I just told you, you don't want to, move around too much. I'm doing a job, obviously, for you. I'm also, as much as I'm Josh the trader, I have to be like triple Josh the instructor and Josh the guy that makes the call outs for you. So I am making other call outs, and I am in other things myself at that point. I should have freaking stuck on this thing. I should have just stuck on this thing. This was so perfect. It broke under and over, made a dollar move up. Jeff, I know that you took part. Jeff, how did you do on this trade before we finished up? He was in it from earlier. I don't know if you took a short on it afterwards, but that was a great bounce from 15. Jeff, you get in on this one? Give him a quick shout out before we part ways, if anything. This was my biggest miss on the morning. I couldn't believe I turned away as fast as I did. There was zero logistics behind me turning away outside of me just trying to make other call outs. That's it. This was such a good move, at least from 15. Lawrence says, Josh, thanks for excellent. No problem there. I appreciate you as always, Lawrence and Larry and Jeff and all of us otherwise. All right, so folks, with that in mind, we're going to head back to at least SOUN, Peloton, maybe GameStop if this decides to make one more push, but it looks pretty flat now. But we'll see what else is out there heading into the afternoon, folks. All right, we'll catch back with everyone in just a bit. Take care.